It is officially Marathon Monday. In just a few hours, tens of thousands of athletes will cross that starting line, kicking off the 127th edition of the Boston Marathon. A lot of emotions this year. Of course, it marks 10 years since the marathon bombings. And that was the scene on Saturday. It was One Boston Day. State officials holding a somber ceremony, remembering and honoring the victims, but also recognizing the resilience and strength shown in the time since.
Everybody who had an official role brought their very, very best, but individual citizens brought their best too. And that kind of generosity of spirit, the notion that we understood that we are in a community where we belong to each other, we have a stake in each other, I think in some ways is the most lasting and most sort of transcendent, if that's the right word, memory that I have.
And with the anniversary, of course, security going to be top of mind for officials along the race course today. 12 News reporter Kayla Fish live at the starting line in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. We can see it's a little foggy up there right now. Kayla, you've been there for a few hours. I imagine the activity level starting to pick up a little bit there.
Hey, good morning, Patrick. Yeah, that's right. We've seen plenty more people really within the last 15-20 minutes or so show up here in Hopkinton. Not a lot of athletes just yet. It's still early. We're still a few hours away from the official start of the 127th Boston Marathon, but we have seen plenty of law enforcement and public safety officials here who, like the runners themselves, have been preparing for this day for months.
Public safety has always been and continues to be of paramount importance when it comes to the Boston Marathon.
Dozens of agencies, including Mass State Troopers and police from all 26.2 miles of the route from Hopkinton to Boston, as well as the National Guard, FBI, and many others, are working together to keep athletes and spectators out of harm's way.
Our number one goal is to ensure a fun and safe day for you and your families, and we are laser focused on identifying and thwarting potential threats to this year's race.
The FBI says it's not aware of any specific or credible threats, but they're prepared to handle any disruption that might occur. This year's safety plan includes both uniformed and undercover law enforcement officers, mobile emergency operations centers, tactical units, and drones to cover every aspect of the marathon route.
We wish the runners and spectators a great race day and remind the public, as always, if you see something suspicious, say something.
And while we're on the topic of law enforcement and public safety, just within the last 10 minutes, we've heard multiple canine units arrive. You can hear the dogs barking in the background here. If you plan on attending the Boston Marathon as a spectator anywhere along that 26.2-mile route, you'll be subject to bag checks. There are certain restrictions on what you can bring. We have more information for you about that on our website right now. And we've continued to hear stories of strength and resilience always connected to this race, but especially in the decade since the bombings. Coming up in the next half hour, we'll hear from Southern New Englanders who have turned tragedy into hope, as well as some who are participating in this year's race. But for now, live in Hopkinton, I'm Kayla Fish, 12 News.
In just a few hours, tens of thousands of athletes will begin the 26.2-mile journey from Hopkinton, Mass. to Boston, part of the 127th running of the Boston Marathon. This year marking a decade since the bombing at the marathon, which of course continues to have a lasting impact on the race and its runners. Kayla Fish joining us live from the starting line in Hopkinton, Mass. with some stories of Southern New Englanders that are running this year with a purpose.
Hey, good morning, Patrick. Well, you know, in the last half hour, we talked all about safety and security. There are plenty of state and local police here, EMS, also what appears to be some federal agents here at the starting line in Hopkinton. And, you know, everyone involved in the marathon, from the participants and the spectators to the staff and the public safety officials that helped to get us to today. Everyone has their own reason for being involved, and it's those stories of hope and resilience that help make this iconic race what it is.
We've changed people's lives.
Rhode Islander Heather Abbott lost her leg in the bombings 10 years ago. She turned her pain into action, starting the Heather Abbott Foundation, which provides specialized prosthetics to amputees around the country.
Hearing the stories about what the beneficiaries have done with the prosthetic devices we've been able to grant them has been really rewarding.
Westport resident Jennifer Potter has run Boston before, but after a heart attack in 2019, she was told she'd never run again. She took that as motivation, and thanks to the right doctors and routine, she will be running in this year's race.
If you ever feel that you can't do something, or you feel that there's something that you really want to do, find a way to do it.
3 Rhode Island State Troopers will also be among the thousands of participants. They're running to raise money for a charity that helps kids and their families impacted by cancer. The 10-year anniversary of the bombings not lost on these members of law enforcement.
A couple of our troopers were at the finish line. One of them, Corporal Bastasian, actually finished the marathon. They ended up saving countless lives by putting tourniquets on. It hits home for us because, I mean, those troopers just were in the right place at the right time.
And you can read much more about each of their stories right now on our website, WPRI.com. Of course, good luck to everyone participating in the 127th Boston Marathon today, which begins in less than 3 hours. The official start time just after 9 a.m. Live in Hopkinton this morning, I'm Kayla Fish, 12 News.